Okay, so this is the basics of what they look like compared to somebody that's just walking down the street. This is what they look like. If you see it from the front, you can only see 3 of them. From the side, you can see more, which is interesting because, let me get something here. This is a Russian icon. And you remember when you see Jesus with those 3 beams coming out the side of the head? A long time ago, they could see those. We can't very well right now. And this was one from my mommy from the 1800s. It's unfortunately, you can't see it unless you get really close, but the beams are really good on this one because they're actually approximately the right size and everything. If you go in there. And I'll leave these out here so you can see them. But a lot of these people don't, and I'll leave this one out here, the people who are making these drawings haven't seen them, like this guy, for example. There you can see the 3 beams, but they're not that big. He didn't know. And the disciples never had those beams. This is a drawing out of South Africa, and it is, it's not perfect, but it gives you a pretty good idea. And this is what if you see them all, this is kind of what they look like. Okay. And I'll leave one of those out there too, so you can come and look at it a little better. I wish I had some of the Kachina dolls. Here in Hopi land, the Hopis combined with the Kachinas later on. A Kachina is an interdimensional being coming from another world. And if you look at a lot of the Kachina dolls, because not all Hopis have seen Kachinas. It's the same kind of thing with the Christians trying to draw Jesus' beams. But a lot of them, if you see them, they're accurate. And you'll see these beams coming out in this whole thing. And all ETs have these beams. There might be a few exceptions, very rare exceptions, but they have to have this level of consciousness or they never could get here in the first place. And the beams are tied, if you look at animals, these are the spots where the horns come out. They're real entry points into the brain. And except we never see this unicorn one, we only imagine it. Anyway, I'm going to keep going on this so that you can get a good idea where we're going with this. Pardon? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's the left and right side. And then there is a possible one here and coming off the chin. The chin is a chakra point. It's a very special chakra point. Nobody ever talks about it. Yogi Bhajan talked about it. He used it in Kundalini Yoga, but not very many people do. These are antennae. They receive images from the heart. This is the link between the heart and the brain. If you don't have these things functioning, you don't have a connection between the heart and the brain. And that was the fall, by the way. You could see the fall as falling through dimensional levels, but a real simple, more accurate way is that we were at our heart and we moved to our brain. And ascension really is just moving back to our heart. It's really, that's all it is. And the ideas of other dimensions and parallel worlds and all that are just more mental stuff associated with an external mind function. We can create anything we want. We can make this reality into any way we want to make it. The problem now is that we don't know that, and everything is just kind of going unconsciously and wherever it's going. It's not being driven in a clean-cut, clear way. Anyway, I've got to keep going here to explain more about this, and I don't think I need those things to do that. There is a order that these beams have to be, when you reconstruct them, there's an order that they have to go in. And that order is, this one is number 1, this set. And this set is number 2, and this set is number 3, and this set is number 4, except you don't have to do this one. It's related to tetrahedral geometry and the way that, very much like the GPS system in the sky. By the way, Bob Dratch invented the GPS system that we're using in the sky when he was 11 years old. and he gave it to Texas Instrument, and they stole it from him. They stole the whole idea, but it's so simple. It's just that if you take a tetrahedron, and if you have 3 satellites aiming at one spot on the Earth, you can measure those differences and get a very accurate place. So we use a lot more than 3. We use a grid of them. There's like 20-something of them. And the more you use, the more accurate it is. But in this case here, once you do 1, 2, and 3, 4 just happens. You don't have to do it. Now that I've said that, there is, every once in a while, it's extremely rare. I've only seen it once, but because I've seen it once, I know it can happen. Every once in a while, it won't happen. It's probably one, I'm just guessing, maybe 1 in 10,000 people. But if it doesn't happen, then all you do is you just manually do it. That's all it is. But it usually will happen. It's the same way in the GPS. If you know 3 points, you know the 4th. So you only have to do 3. Okay, so that's the order. You begin with this one, then you come to the left, right, then you come to the third eye one, and then this one will happen automatically. They also have a polarity associated with them. And this one is positive, and the opposite is negative. This one's positive, this one is negative. And this one is positive, and this one is negative. And the one on the left side is positive, and the one on the right side is negative. So this side is positive, this side is negative. In a minute you're going to see this is a really good thing. It happens to be that way, otherwise it'd be really hard to do this. And now going to the ends, and just one more little thing, just so you know, the light, these things light up, and I mean they get really bright. And the light is coming from the pineal chakra out. Comes out this way. But there's also a flow in. It's coming both ways. But the light as it comes in is spiraling. It's rotating. Same way with your breathing tube. Light coming down is rotating one way, coming up is rotating the other way. And when they meet, they do that thing. So both of these, all of these things are rotating. The light itself is doing this. And when they are fully activated, there is a sphere. Now this does not happen, and it will not happen today, and well, it might. It probably won't happen today. And but when the heart is completely linked back to the brain, the way it was 13,000 years ago, a sphere appears. Now this sphere is not going to fit perfectly in here, but it gives you a pretty good idea. They're literally on the surface of that sphere, and that's why there's a slight curve that's on there. And this sphere is perfect. It's perfect. But it doesn't appear until these other things begin to happen that we're going to talk about. Before you get out of here, you're going to understand this completely. We're not going to leave anything out or hide anything or anything. I mean, it takes a while because it's complicated. But interesting that once you understand this, to actually do it is not that hard. It's really easy. It's much easier to do than the Merkaba. And this is simple. Once you get it, it just kind of happens. Once you know how to set up one set of beams, the rest of them are all the same thing over and over and over. And now I'm going to talk about the inside, what's going on inside the brain. This is what happens as it leaves the surface of the skull. It's these pure, white, clean beams of light. And but inside, there are these little, they come like this and they curve. And they're very organic in nature. They're very much like electricity, and they're moving all the time. They're wiggling. You know those little spheres you can buy with electrical things? You see these things going up to the thing? They look kind of like that. They're constantly changing and moving. And they come like this. They're never the same. And that's true with the left and right one too. And they're constantly moving all the time. And now this is, I think I've got it all on there. This is what would be if the heart was fully connected with this. But that's not how it is. For most people, not only do they look like this, but the inside, okay, this is the pineal gland. The beams as they go, oh wait a minute, I gotta put the skull in there. And the beams as they come in, what they do is they go like this. They come down and they just go nowhere. And the other one will come over here and it'll maybe go up here. And this one maybe will come down here. They avoid, like crazy, that spot. They will not touch it. I've had a lot of theories of all of this in my life, wondering what happened and why this took place. I know that in China, when they were studying the psychic kids, this is the Chinese government and their scientific community, were studying the super psychic children. They studied them for about 10 years, and then they got freaked out by them, completely freaked out, and then switched. They went into fear and switched the other way and started arresting them all and doing all kinds of weird stuff, arresting the Taoists and the Qigong masters, and they've gone crazy now. 3 of these kids are more powerful than the entire Chinese army, and they know it. And now that they know it, they're just like they're trying to stop it, but they can't really. But it's what's happening. But while they were studying them, they discovered something which was kind of important. They found that when the children, they usually came in, they became aware of their psychic abilities when they were about 5 or 6 years old. That was the time when, before that, they didn't, nothing. And then when they got to puberty, then they just kept getting better and better and better and better and better. But when they got to puberty, 1 of 2 things happened. Either they just kept getting better and better and better and better and better and better, or it just shut off, and they couldn't do it anymore. And when they studied them, they couldn't figure out, at least the Chinese couldn't figure out why this thing happened. And it happened, but what they did find out is the percentage. It happened with about 80% of the kids. They couldn't do it anymore when they hit puberty. And this other 20% just kept going and became superhuman beings. And so I remembered that percentage and started looking around, and I found out in the United States, we have discovered through our scientific community that when teenagers go through puberty, 80% of them grow a calcium shield around their pineal gland. And calcium is an insulator. It's a soft calcium, kind of like arthritis type calcium. And it just blocks the ability to be able to do this work. You guys in here, there's probably nobody. You guys probably don't have a calcium shield, or you probably you wouldn't be here now anyway. But, and so now, well, first of all, before I say now, what I think is going on is just a guess. I don't know. It's not even a theory. It's more of a guess. We have put a lot of fear into our children about psychic abilities. You know, I mean, like, we've burned people at the stake. We've done everything. A lot of the world thinks it's evil, especially the Christians, which I never could understand, because here's Jesus doing all these things. He's doing all kinds of stuff. He's bringing people back from the dead and all kinds of stuff. And then Jesus says to the Christians, all these things that I'm doing, you can even do greater things. He's given them permission, saying, okay. And yet, at the same time, if somebody floats off the ground or something like that, then it's from the devil. I don't get that. But nevertheless, the fear has been put out there. And I really think that the children are saying, okay, mommy and daddy, I will be a good kid and I will not do psychic ability. Seal it up. And that may be an answer, or maybe it's only part of an answer. But it's interesting that the percentages are the same here in the United States as they are in China. So I don't know that for not, but almost everybody walking around now has these things non-functioning, and these things are not touching the pineal gland, or pineal chakra rather, in this case. The gland is the one that gets sealed, but it's the chakra that works off of it, and these things are connecting to the chakra, not to the gland, just to be clear. And so your job now is to get these back into straight beams and reconnect this. And if you can do that, you will reestablish the potential of reconnecting to your heart. So we're going to do this today and get you to do it, and then tomorrow and the next day we're going to go back through these procedures to reconnect your heart back to the brain. And once that happens, you're going to become incredibly psychic. And if you use it in the way I suggest, that power will be used only for good, and not for good and bad. It'll be not polarized. The intention will only go to help life everywhere. So that's our job now, is to reconnect these things and get these beams straight.
When we reconnect it, it connects to the gland or still to the chakra?
No, you mean these beams?
Yeah.
They connect to the chakra, not to the gland.
Even after the activity that we will do?
Yes. You don't have to, the gland is only the source of power. It's like, this is your heart chakra, here's your heart over here. There's a direct connection between the two, but they're very different. And they're both important. I mean, this is the source of this chakra, but and there's some things you would do with the chakra and some things you would do with the heart, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. But in this case here, definitely you're connecting to the chakra, not the gland. But they're very close together. They're not very far apart.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, I'm going to give you the instructions on how to redo this, how to go from the fuzzy little beams to this. And then tomorrow, we're going to come back to this and add a whole bunch more stuff on here that will, at that point, it'll become clear, and you'll understand why we're doing that. But right now, we're just getting these beams out. And we're moving backwards, which is not really logical. We're going from a Merkaba field, which that's out here, and the Merkaba field is intimately connected to these beams and to this sphere. This sphere here is intimately connected at this point right here to the Leonardo sphere that's in your Merkaba. There is a very direct relationship between those two, but we'll slowly work so that it becomes clear where we're going with all of this. So here's what you do. And I'm going to give you the instructions exactly the way the Mayans and the Kahunas told me. which is how to do it on another person, because they do it, the way they teach you is how they're going to do it to their children when they reach puberty. And so I'm going to give you the same instructions, but you are going to have to apply that to yourself. Initially, I had two people come together and one would do each other one. The only thing is that if you don't do this right, you give that other person an unbelievable headache. It's a migraine headache of major proportions. And I did it a few times, and after you have about half the room mad at the other half of the room, I figured no more of that. If you give yourself a headache, you're going to have to do it yourself, so you don't blame anybody. So I'm going to show you how to do it on someone else, but at the same time, you're going to apply it to yourself, and you'll see it's not that hard to do. So here's what you do. You start with number 1, this one, the unicorn one. If you want to know where that location is, take the tip of your nose and the tip of your chin, move it up and rock over. That point right there, where I'm in right now, is this one. Okay? That's the third eye. And you're going to need to know where that point is next, or very soon. If you move that thing up to here and rock down, that will show you where the unicorn one is, which is way up here. And if you do it one more time, it'll show you where that one is. So these three it'll show you where those three, and all three of these are tied to, all three of those points are tied to the pineal chakra. We're going to come in with other glands and things here later. There's a lot of other stuff in here that all has to be operating at the same time. It's a much more complex pattern. I just want to get these beams out right now. Okay, so now that you know where this place is, when you do that, I want to show you where this place is, and that is you have a little bump on the back of your head, back here, and then directly below it there's a little soft spot. There's probably a name for it, but I don't know what it is. What's it called? Occipital. You all sound like you're saying different words to me. Occiput? I don't think that, is that right? Is that right? Oh, he says yes. This guy knows, I'm sure. Okay, occiput. So that's a chakra point. That's a major chakra point. You mean I have to lift up my ponytail? It's right here. Don't look. Okay. Anyway, so now you know where these come out of. And so here's the procedure. This is what you do. Again, this is on somebody else, but you do the same thing. Okay, you got a fuzzy thing here, right? You just reach up with both hands. You have to come around to the left side of the body. That's why I have it facing this way. You can't go around to the right side of the body if you do it in somebody else. It won't work. And I'll explain why in just a moment. You have to come around to the right side of the left side of the body. The left side of the body. And the reason is because this beam coming out of here has a positive charge, and this one has a negative charge. And you got to use your hands, and your left hand has a negative charge, and your right hand has a positive charge. And so when you couple over the top of these, the negative hand couples with the positive, and the positive couples with the negative, and it works. It will not work if you try it the other way around. And so you come around here. So the first thing you do is you have this fuzzy little thing, and you have a little fuzzy thing here. And by the way, this one in the front is almost always bigger than this one back here. This one is always the weakest one on. Not always. There's always exceptions. But usually, this one here is just a little tiny nub, and this one's bigger. So you get this big, these clouds that are out there, and you have to see them, unfortunately. You don't have to see them on yourself, but if you're working on somebody else, you have to see them. For one thing, for thousands of years, they've kind of moved around, and they may not be coming directly out of those points. They may be up high, and this one might be low. This one might be off center, and maybe concussions or things that have happened over time. I don't know. But you just grab those things, and you grab this one, and you, with your intention, you tell the body, this other person or yourself, to go into a beam. But what happens is, even though you see this big fuzzy thing and you grab it and you tell it to go into a beam, it will, just like that, instantly. But the beam will usually only be about this long. Maybe this one will be an inch and this is a half an inch or something. It'll be really short. When it condenses down into the beam, there's not much there. And and you can tell by how long they are, how much power the pineal chakra is putting out. And so you're holding them just like handlebars, like you're holding on the handlebars of a motorcycle or something. You're holding them here and you tell them to go into a beam, and they will be short little things. Well, you can sense or feel which one is stronger and which one is weaker. You go to the weaker of the two, and you tell just that one to put out more energy and get longer. When you're talking to another body, you can use words, the body will hear you, but you can talk inside of your head, the body will hear you just as well, maybe even better. And so you can just tell it to put out more energy, and it will do what you say, but it'll usually go like this, a little tiny bit more, because the body hasn't done this in a long time, and to it's putting out a lot more energy. But you have to say, no, more. You just keep going. And the body sometimes kind of freaks out over this. The person itself is kind of usually going through something sometimes. But all you're going to do, you're not going to pull it all the way out. You're going to just make it as wide as your palm. You just want it to do a lot more energy than what it's been doing. And so you just keep telling it, no, more, until that beam starts to extend out from the palm, and then you can just stop. And when it does, then you switch to the more powerful one, and you tell it to do it. And usually, you might have to tell it 10 times to keep going more, no more, and the little body's going, you got to be kidding! This is a lot of energy, And you get it out to approximately this long in both hands, and then that's all you got to do. Doesn't have to be perfect or super precise or anything else like that. You just get them approximately out about the width of your hands. And then you drop your hands and you put your chakra points directly over those points, right over the top of those points. So if you're doing it on your own hand, your left hand goes on the front and your right hand goes on the back. Now you can do this without your hands when you're doing it to yourself. You can just do it sitting and do all of it without it. You're communicating with your own body. It's very clear. But some people really need to feel, and they need to use their hands. So you put your hands over the top of your chakra, over that chakra, etc. Bam. But then the next thing you do, and this is hard to explain, hopefully you can pick this up, you close your eyes. You can see inside the body with your eyes closed. If you open them up, you see the surface or what's around it, but you can't see inside the body. If you close your eyes, and with your intention, you look to see the pineal chakra. If you do, it's usually, for most people, it shows up as red, and some people it shows up as black. For you, it might be turquoise, who knows, but it's majority of people, it's usually red or black. And you see this. Once you see that, the next thing is to look to forget about all these other beams. You're only looking at this one now. You look to see these two little beams that are wiggling around there. And so you see the chakra point, and you see these little beams going like this. And now with your holding your hands over that, with your intention, you get those beams to connect to that. And they don't want to do it. They will fight you. You'll get them, and they're just like going, "No, I won't do that." And you have to, "Yes, you will." And you've got to keep working with them until and a lot of times they'll connect, and they'll do it for like 2 seconds. They go, "Ah!" And they'll break apart and start going away. You know, they're doing a no-no. And so you just keep doing it until you get them to connect, and then you've got to hold it there for, it depends on the person, but at least a minute, and maybe even 2 minutes, until you can see that they're not going to break apart. And then when you feel that they're not going to break apart, and you've got them there, then with your intention, you pull the beams out from the palms, you pull them out, and they will follow right behind your hands as you go, and go beyond the sphere, because once they get to where the sphere is, they will stop. And so you go out this far out, say, you can go past it a few inches. Won't matter. Wouldn't matter if you went that far out. Just have to get out farther than 1 hand length away from this. And then the 1 hand length is this one for sure. And then it depends on the shape of the head. They have to conform to the sphere that's formed through that. So you pull them out. They'll come out. There's no sphere here now. There's just these 2 beams sitting there. And when you get them out, the next thing you do is you shift your attention to the very ends of these things. And they're pulsing. They're throbbing. I haven't done the geometry work, but I'm about 99.999999% certain that it's connected to the heartbeat, because these beams are directly connected to the heart. And I've learned some things about this. You can actually tell when someone's going to have a heart attack. You can tell probably at least a week in advance, for sure, if they're going to have a heart attack, when they're going to, because this beam here will rotate into this beam. And there won't be one here at all. There'll only be, it'll look like 1 beam here, and there's really 2. And if you try to separate them and pull them back, the moment you let go, they're spring-loaded. They'll go right back again. And it's a long story how I found out about this, but it happens every time. If you could get these beams up onto a computer screen, which you can do because they're electromagnetic in nature, you would be able to just take a photograph and know if someone's about to have a heart attack. And so once you pull them out and you feel you've got to feel this pulsing, and for me, I feel it in the palms. Well, what it is they're pulsing like a ping pong match. Pulse, 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 back and forth. You don't want that. Is there anybody here who knows Jensen Jitsu? Jensen Jitsu? A little bit?
I know that trick of feeling simultaneous.
Yeah, they have patterns for every disease or problem you can think of. And you'll pick a point here and maybe a point over here, and they're throbbing back and forth. Don't. And you have to, with intention, get them to stop doing that and go pulsing the same. And as soon as they pulse the same, then you go to another set of patterns and get those to pulse the same, and you keep going, and then whatever the person's problem is just disappears. It's very good. But this is very similar. With your intention, you've got to get them to pulse the same. And so what happens is you're putting your attention in there to pulse the same, and you might go for 30 seconds, nothing happens, and then it goes through a moment of chaos, and the pulsing, which was going pulse, 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 and then it goes pulse, 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 pulse. It kind of goes crazy for a moment, then pulse, pulse. They're pulsing the same. As soon as they are, you count the pulses. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the Mayans say you wait until you get 20 pulses. I don't know if it's because of their 2013 systems and all that other stuff, but they say 20 pulses will stabilize. I go up to like 25. Make sure. But you have to do at least 20 pulses, and when you feel 20 pulses or more on there, you can drop your hands, And this beam will be connected in here, and it'll just stay there. And then you go around to the back of the person next to get to the side beams, because that's number 2. And you get to these beams on the side. Now, where it is, again, it's not the temples, but if you go right to where your ear comes to your head, it's just a little higher and maybe just a little tiny bit in front. It's right about there. You can kind of feel it. It goes all the way through into the pineal chakra, and that's where they come out of. And so you go behind the person and you repeat what you just said. You see the little fuzzy things. If they're off center, you just pull them back with your intention, get them where they are. Feel which is weaker, get that weaker one, talk to the body, get it to come out to there, do the other one out to there. Put your hands on the palms on the person's head or on your own head if you're doing it. And look inside. And see and you can see inside your own head, looking with your eyes closed, and you'll see the pineal chakra. You'll see the little beams. You've got to get them to connect. Once they're connected, then you pull the beams out on either side. It's convenient because your left hand happens to be where the positive beam is. Otherwise, you'd have to be doing this kind of stuff, which is hard. And then you pull them out, and you do the pulsing thing again. They'll be going back and forth. You've got to stop that with your intention, get it to pulse the same, count 20 or more, and then you can drop that one. Then you come to your third eye, this beam, this level one running across here, and you do exactly the same thing, and then this one will happen automatically. And then you should not have to do this one. If you have to do this one, it's a little awkward in the sense that you have to do it here, but you can only reach this at the perineum. There's no other way. It's a long ways in, but to reach up through the tube is the only way you can get to this point because it's in the middle of your throat. But it's not likely that you'll even see anybody in your lifetime that has to do that. But just so you know, you can't reach this point from here. You have to reach it all the way from the breathing tube at the perineum. And so you got to know that person really well. Let's see. Once these are out and running, what happens in actual practice, when you do it to someone else, is a lot of times they'll run for about 10 or 15 minutes and collapse. And you have to do it all over again. Usually, the second time will hold. And at which point, it will go for quite a while. I don't really know how long. A long time. But really this system, to get these out, you only have to do it about 2 weeks, every day for about 2 weeks, and it's permanent. It won't go away after that. But it doesn't do a lot of function, even though it's out there and running. It's very much like the Merkaba field. The Merkaba field doesn't do much until everything is lined up at once, and we're going backwards. So you've got your Merkaba field. Now you're going to have your beams of light set up. There will be no sphere around it yet. And this sphere, by the way, glows. It produces a halo around the body that you can photograph. And science has done this. Dr. James Hart has discovered that once anybody goes into this thing and does this, their head actually glows in the dark and they can see them. They can photograph it. That's why with Jesus they put that thing around him. Or with Buddha too. Buddha had the same thing going on, but they didn't see the beams with him. But he had his beams going, for sure, or he wouldn't have been where he was. It's coming.
You didn't say what is the weak one in the other two? So we need to start with the weak one.
Yeah, you do that's the same procedure that we did on this one. You do on the left, right, or the front, back, or any of them. The procedure is identical on each one of them. So you always start with the weaker one to bring it out, then you go with a stronger one to bring it out.
So there is no weaker one. I need to feel it, or is it always one side?
I can feel it. If you can't feel it, then guess. It's not essential. You can start with the stronger one, but if you pull the stronger one out first, it's harder to pull out the weaker one. It's better to pull out the weaker one first and then the stronger one.
And it will only work if you do it in this sequence. First this one. And
in this order?
Yeah.
Both the Kahunas and the Mayans are really adamant about that. Yeah, this is the order. And not to go in any other order. I've never even tried it in any. I just trust them, and so I've never even tried it in any other order. I'm not trying to develop a new science or anything. I just, if you say so, okay. And that's what they told me is you got to do it in this order. Now, I'm strong about that because when the Kahunas knew exactly the same thing and did exactly the same order, I said, okay.
Thank you.
I believe you guys.
Is it right to say the pulse that you feel on your hands should be equal to a person's heart rate?
I believe you will find that it is directly connected to the pulsing of the heart.
So if that means that we can actually check the exact pulse?
Yeah, you should be able to. Yeah, if you want to hold somebody, if you want to do experimenting, you should be able to do that.
Meaning that we've done it correctly then?
Huh? You don't what?
Does that mean that we've done it correctly, the rate we feel and the exact rate of the person?
Well,
if they are equal?
Yeah, I mean, yes, they're pulsing at the same time, but that's not going to, I don't think that's going to help you to get these two things to pulse the same, because you just simply have to, you're going to feel in one hand a pulse, and then in the other hand a pulse. And you've got to get them so they're pulsing simultaneously.
Okay, once you've got them both.
And it doesn't matter if you've linked it to the heart or not at this point. But I'm almost certain for sure that that's what it is. I've learned too much about the relationship between this and the heart, and they're just intimately connected. I was in Mexico one time, and this. I used to actually find people in the audience that had really bad migraine headaches, and I would work on them, because when you do this, the migraine goes away. If you have migraines all the time, you're in luck. Because if you do this and you establish these things, you're more than likely you're going to find that your migraines stop, unless it's caused by a physiological thing, something like a tumor or something. But if it has any emotional base in it at all, it's just going to go away. They just stop, as long as you keep the beams out. In fact, that's how I found out, because when I was doing psychic work for the Mayans at where was I? Palenque, and when I got done after a day's work of doing this psychic work, my little psychic muscle was hurting, and I had a headache. And I never get headaches. I never. Maybe 15 years or 20 years or something, I get a little one, but I don't get headaches. And I just had this banging headache, and that's how they stopped it. They made me do this, and headache went away instantly. And so I was using people I would get somebody that had a really bad headache, and I'd come up here and I'd pull all their beams out and do the stuff like that, and every single time the person would go, wow, I feel good, I don't have a problem anymore, And so I would use them as biofeedback to the group. But one time I was in Mexico, and I asked this for somebody, and this guy jumped up, ran, and slid on the floor right in front of me. He said, "You got it in me, I can't see." And I said, okay. And so I put him in a chair and did this thing. But as soon as when I started with him, he was missing this one, and I intuited it was in here, and I found it, and I got it and moved it back up to here. And then the moment I would let go of it, ding, it would go back. And it happened, I couldn't get it to go up to that position. I would, every time I'd let go, it would go right back. And 5, 6, 7 times it would do that. And finally I had to tell him, I'm sorry, but I don't know what's going on and I don't know how to deal with this. So I told him, I can't help you. I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on. When he left, I went and when there was a break, I went into the Angels and I said, what was that? What was happening? And that's when they said, well, he's going to have a heart attack in about 2 days. And that is one of the signs. And and then they told me I had to tell him, which I don't like that. So I went to him and I said, you know, and he was only 35 years old. And I said to him, I'm sorry, but they're telling me that you're going to have a heart attack very soon. And he went, me? I'm fine. I don't have a problem with that. I said, well, that's what they told me. And then I said, if it does happen, you need to work with these beams and reconnect all this stuff. I told him what to do. 2 days later, he had a heart attack, went to the hospital, and he did exactly what I told him to do, and he's now, that was 15 years ago probably, or something like that, and he's fine now. But that was my first indication that there was a direct relationship between these beams and the heart. Now I know for sure there is on other levels. And so, anyway, I hope that helps. So does everybody understand how to do this? I'll put it questions. But we have to follow the microphone.
Yes. I have one question. It is okay to do this to the children?
Yeah, it's okay. It's good for them. They like it.
Because in one of your books you said also, mentioned Bronikov, and he does pretty much the same on the video that the same.
Oh, Bronikov in Russia, Moscow? Yeah. I don't know what he does, actually. But,
you mentioned in one of your books, like, that the psychic children in Russia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know what he's doing in his work. He takes blind children and teaches them to see. He takes people who are totally blind and teaches them how to read, watch television, and drive cars. And it's hard to believe, but it's true. And I've been involved with people that are totally blind. I mentioned Marianne Shinfield a long time ago. Marianne Shinfield was completely blind. She was in her 50s, but you would never know she was blind by interacting with her because she seems totally normal. But she actually has no eyes at all. And she can see. NASA's taken her now. I'll probably never see her again. They didn't believe her. They asked her, where are you? And she said, well, I'm actually floating around the solar system most of the time. And I'm sure they internally kind of laughed at her. And then they said, well, if you're really floating around the thing, then we want you to go to a certain satellite up there and read the serial number off of it. And she did. And that caught their attention. And so they use her as eyes to go out and see, because she can go to Mars or anywhere and just go right down to something and look at it and tell them what they see. And she's very good. And I've been with her I spent 3 or 4 months with her, and got to do what she got to do, and it was fun. And I learned a lot from her. But more recently, I was with the Navajo and with one of the shamans there, and I took a group into Antelope Canyon, which is on Navajo land. You have to get their permission, and so he took us there, and he is also a shaman. And we were there with his 2 aunts, I think they were, these 2 women that were a little older than him, and so he led us through the canyon. He gets to the other side. He tells us all these stories and things. He comes in and he sings peyote songs to us. And he takes us outside on the other end, and then there's a natural-looking snake that was not carved that points to the entryway to this place. And he's showing everything, where the snake is and the eyes and all this stuff like that. And all the group is looking. And one of the aunts come over. She's got her arm around me like this. And she leans over and says, isn't it amazing? And I said, what? What's amazing? She says, I don't think I want to use this name either, because I don't have his permission. But she says I guess it's their niece. Is that what it is? I don't know. And no, I mean nephew. It's their nephew. And she says, oh well, our nephew is blind. He can't see anything, but you can't tell. And so I didn't know that about him. Now I know. But boy, can he see internally. I mean, when we do shamanistic work, he is the most visual person I've ever seen inside. He can appear to me better than anybody I've ever seen. But he has no eyes. It was funny going back after she just told me that, and he's driving a pickup truck. And I'm in the back of his pickup truck. I got a blind guy driving over the road there. Life is weird. Maybe that's where my wife got it. My wife just stuck something on the refrigerator that says, life is weird.
So, when you were explaining this, what I heard was that the Mayans and the other Indians, Kahunas,
they're from Hawaii.
They do it on their teenagers when they enter.
When they reach puberty, yes.
And then what I heard was when the psychic children go into puberty, some of them do the calcium thing.
Some of them grow, about 80% of them, at least in China, grow calcium shields around their pineal gland.
So my question is, the woman just asked about doing it with children. So if you do it pre-puberty, is there something to look out for when they reach puberty?
More than likely, if you establish this into them before they reach puberty, they're not going to grow a calcium shield, I'll bet you. No, it's good for kids, but they should. But no, well, let me take all that back, because I don't know. They don't do it before puberty, so maybe you're not supposed to.
Because the reason I'm asking the question is because I'm making an assumption that the psychic kids are having this going on, and then some of them do 80% do the calcium. That's just an assumption.
No, actually the children don't have this going on when they're like 5 and 6 years old, and yet that's where they're incredibly psychic. That's a good question. I've never really thought of that, and I don't know. I don't know what the children are doing. I do know that what they're doing is nothing like we adults do. I mean, just like in my conversation with a lot of these psychic kids, that they're pulling the energy in through the 4th and 5th lumbar, and they know it. It's coming in at 90 degrees, and it goes straight up the spine. I don't see that anywhere else. So maybe they have some other way of linking the brain to the heart. But once we reach puberty, we have to do this. Wow, that just sets up a whole other thing of research. I don't know. You just gave me a lot of work. Excuse me. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Okay. When you're doing this to someone else, are you physically or internally seeing their chakra, or are they seeing it with the little fuzzies?
No, you have to see it. They don't have to see it.
Okay, so you have to see it.
You're actually doing it for them. But if you're doing it yourself, on yourself, you have to see your own. You have to see this going on inside your own head, and you can do that.
Okay.
One more question from here, the same side.
Yes. I was trying to figure out what time is it? It's
10 to 1.
10 to 1?
Can I involve my kids in the yesterday ceremony when I come back home? Is it appropriate for kids to be involved, sitting on the sides and doing Om and Alleluia?
Oh yeah, that procedure?
Yesterday, yeah.
Well, all I know is that in Germany, they've turned it into a therapy plan in Germany. And they take families there was the person who started this, who came to a workshop, he told me, he says, my family is a mess. He says his wife hates him. One of his sons is trying to literally kill him. And he's got, the whole family is just a mess. And And so he managed, I don't know how he did that, but he managed to get the family together and they did this whole thing. And afterwards, it completely changed everything. They started loving each other again. And so he was the one that went out and started developing this to help other families. He figured there's probably, any family I go to is probably not as bad as mine. So I think it's probably a good thing. But I haven't done it with families personally, so I don't know. I don't know if there's any side effects, or I don't know. Yeah.
It's here. Can you speak a little bit about two last beams and chin chakra?
The chin chakra?
And the beam at the back.
Well, this is, again, if a person is coming down from consciousness into a lower place, is what I did, and all these indigo kids that are here, and the super psychic kids, they're not from here. They're not human. They came from other places. They're human now, and they were coming down. Those people arrive here with this beam here, but once they get here, and they establish themselves and they get into human form, they switch it over to here because now they're going to go back up, and so they need, well, I know they switch it because if you look at, I've looked at lots of the indigo kids, but I know when they first got here, this is where it would be. The heart has 10 beams, not 8. There's a lot more I haven't told you about. We're only talking about there's 3 of these spheres, and there's 3 of these things around the body. And we'll talk about those later. And, you just try to make it as complicated as you can, and you probably won't even get close to what the human body does. We have to look at the whole system. We have to look at the whole system to be able to see what it is, and we're not there yet. Right now I'm just working with one set. But there is another one that goes around the heart, and there's another set that goes around the genitals. Actually, it's aimed at the uterus, the creation process. And the uterus can be used in more ways than we know. So what we'll do is I'm going to review this one more time, just to take what we do, and then we're going to do it. You'll get about 15 minutes or so to go through it. You'll do it the whole thing, see if you can do it, and then we'll come after that and ask questions, because once you actually do it, you'll realize what you don't know. Okay, you got the basics here, okay? But we begin with this beam, number 1. We then go to 2, left and right, then 3, third eye, and then 4 you don't have to do. And so the procedure is, again, you either can see or sense or feel these things. And it's easier on yourself sometimes than it is others, because you're just going to be reaching up here, right in your own head. And you grab these things. If you're not sure, just use your intuition and just do the best you can. This works on most people, even if they don't really know how. It's because of the gland that we're working with. This pineal gland is a pretty interesting thing. It functions through intention more than anything else. So you, beginning with here, you will work on this one as 1, 2, and 3. So it's up high on your head. And you need to find that spot, and you need to find the spot back here to begin with. And you need to know where this left and right one is, just right where your ears come out. It's just a little bit higher and a tiny bit forward. And if you just kind of aim toward the center of your head, you're going to get there. Remember, the pineal chakra is in the center of your breathing tube. So you're really kind of aiming for the center of everything. The pineal gland itself is just a little bit back from there. And then this spot here is just 1. You just go up 1, and that's where it is. This is where your third eye is. A lot in India, you see them put the red dot way down lower. There is nothing there. It's not correct. It's up here. And later when we start talking tomorrow and next day about reconnecting to the brain, this spot's going to be very important because we are going to show you exactly how to open the third eye, precisely what to do. And you have to know where that spot is. It's one of the problems when people are learning is that they close their eyes and they're trying to look through the third eye, but they're still looking through these eyes. This is the reason why they cross their eyes a little bit to look up, because you've got to get your focus up here, not down here. You really do have two different levels of where you can see from. So back to this, you grab those two fuzzy places, and I can just about tell you, you're going to start back here, and you get that one, you ask that one to grow, and you keep getting it to grow until it's about as wide as your hand. Then you come to the one in front, and you get that one about as wide as your hand. And then as soon as your body has created those beams, even that long, you switch and you put your hand chakra right over the top. So you can still do that. And that's when you close your eyes and look inside. Now you can see your own inner brain in front of you. You can psychically see some. You could even look inside and see in front of you what's in your liver or your kidneys or anything else. You don't have to be looking at that thing. And so you look to find the pineal chakra first, see where it is, and then see or sense or feel these beams that are wiggling around it. And with your intention, you just keep getting, while you're holding here, you just keep getting those beams to connect to that place. And you got to watch it, because they'll connect and they'll break away, and they'll connect and they'll break away, and they'll connect, and you have to hold them there. Once they're connected, really use your intention. Just, no, you can't move. And then after about a minute or so, you can then feel that they're connected. You expand your hands out. You come out. And it doesn't have to be, it's not your hands that are really doing it, it's your intention that's doing it. So if you're a little crooked or something like that, the body knows what you're doing. And so you pull them out, and then you have to sense and feel that pulsing. And again, you don't have to, on yourself, you can put your hands and sit on them and just not even use them, and you can do it all just through intention. And you wait until you can get that pulsing the same, and then you count 20 or more pulses. And literally count them every time you feel it. 1, 2, 3. By the way, the speed of the rate, which is connected to your heart, I believe, isn't important. At least not right now, not for what we're doing here. So if it's going pulse, 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 or pulse, pulse, doesn't matter. Just count the pulses. And then once you get 20, you can drop your hands and you go to number 2. You do exactly the same thing, and then do to number 3. Do it 3 times, and then you're done. So, is there any final questions that you still don't understand? Okay, go ahead.
When you say you need to connect them, they need to connect to the pineal gland, or they need to move energy between the whole tube? It's like from back to forth, or to the pineal gland?
No, I'm talking about connecting these beams.
One to another? It's like it
No,
comes.
they don't connect to each other. They connect to the chakra point.
And after they connect, energy goes through like one beam, or it's not connected?
Well, the 2 beams then become one beam, but it's polarized. They function together. And so you have 4 male beams and 4 female beams. Same way as on a star tetrahedron.
And from what is the connection between the line? It's like
this?
Yeah.
It connects in the pineal chakra. What do you mean between them?
If there is any energetic connection through all the line.
You mean from here to here?
Yeah.
Yes, they're functioning as one single unit.
Okay, thank you.
But these other ones are functioning as one single unit separately from this one, as I understand it. But they have a since they're being described to me as antenna or antennae, I guess they reach different by their angles or what they reach different frequencies. I don't know, but what they're bringing. Well, I don't want to get into that yet. I don't want to get into the imagery and how it works yet. I can hardly see out of here. I mean, I know you're there, sort of.
My question is, at the beginning of this, we're just starting to pull the tubes away from the head, and then we do this middle work, and then we come back after we've sort of seen these impulses balance out, and then you have us pull it further. Is there a reason why we're not just pulling it out to the halo there? I don't understand why we just pull it out a few inches and then do this.
Oh,
work,
you mean why do you do it first a little bit and then?
Right. Yes.
As I understand, it's to get the body used to putting out a large amount of energy. It's not used to it. It's been a long time, probably thousands of years, more than likely, since you've done this, and the body doesn't know. In fact, the pineal gland, its real function. The pineal gland should be, from what I'm being told, exactly the same size as one of these eyes, and more round, etc. The pineal gland is an eye, literally,
Right.
scientifically. It is hollow. It has color receptors inside of it. It has a lens on it for receiving light, and that is Jacob Liberman's work with light, the medicine of the future, and he's one of the most advanced people in the eyes and light in the world.
Yeah.
But it's entropy down to like a pea or something. We haven't used it. I believe that if you start using it, it's going to grow. It's going to get just like a muscle or anything else. It's going to get stronger. But the thing is the lens is facing up this way. It's looking right up the tube, and it's designed to receive light from above. And where these eyes are facing at 90 degrees, looking out this way. And so our lenses are, but it is literally an eyeball. It has other functions, but that's one of them. One of the things that when I was working with Jacob Liberman, that he showed me, which was really amazing. This guy really knows a lot about this. But they've tracked exactly when light goes in the eyes, exactly where it goes, and precisely the whole method. But right after it leaves the pineal gland, it literally, according to Jacob Liberman, it goes to every single cell in the body. And he says, from the way that they see it now, every cell in your body is looking at exactly what you're looking at. That changes things about all you guys in here are looking at what I'm looking at. He says the light actually enters into every single cell. So I don't know, but that's what he says. Yes.
One thing that you mentioned this morning, that I don't think you just mentioned now, was when you first grab the fuzzy things at the beginning, that you need to actually ask them to turn into a beam before you start stretching
that's
them?
your intention.
Okay, so
Your intention is that when you grab those fuzzy things and you hold on to them and you put your thumb and first finger together so that you get the right size, that's what you want to do, is get the proper size. And then you tell it to go into a beam. It'll do that instantly. There's no problem with the body doing that. The only thing is that once you do that, then you have to pull it, get it stronger, and that's where you may see some resistance from your body. Once you've done it one time, and then you go to do it the body goes, okay, I got it, and it'll go a lot faster. By the time you do the third one, it'll go, it'll go really fast, because now it knows what you're talking about. But it may not agree with you. I mean, meaning that it seems to me that the body just has a hard time believing that the source of the body, which is, we're like God to the body, wants that much energy to come out because it hasn't done it in so long. But it learns, and then after a while, it gets used to it. It's not a problem. Okay, is any other questions? Okay.
So the negative side of which is the left side, goes to the positive side of the tube.
Mm-hmm.
It works that way.
Just think of it as male and female.
Yes. And which is the positive side? Could that be weaker than the negative side?
Yes, it can be.
So you
well,
find
definitely,
out,
like when you're going left and right side, you never know which side's going to be stronger, because some people focus more on one side of the brain than the other.
I see. So how do you detect? Did you just pick one?
Well, if you're
Kinda use your
sensitive, you can
senses?
feel it. If you can't feel it, then yeah, pick one.
Okay. Thank you.
If you don't know which one's weaker, just start with one. No? That's it?
Is
Okay.
everyone's left
Then
hand
let's just do this. Let's
negative?
practice it.
Okay.
Do the best you can. Don't worry if you're going to fail or not, or who cares? I mean, just go for it, and getting hot under these lights. Just go for it and do the best you can, and then you will see where your weaknesses are and what you know and don't know. We'll have another discussion. I'm going to give you 15 minutes, because that's usually plenty enough time to do this one time, and then we'll have another discussion after that. So, you ready? Go. Well, most of you are done, but some of you are still working, so keep working. I'm not sure the levels you were at, because some of them are on the side, and in any rate, just keep working, and I'm going to ask if there's anybody that has questions. Something you didn't understand that you discovered when you were trying to do it. So, at least you could feel the pulsing. Some people can't feel the pulsing.
Do you have to like see the pineal gland, or can you just sense it?
You can see it, sense it, or feel it.
Okay.
Always. Whenever I talk about, sometimes I'll just say see something, but I always mean you can see it, sense it, or feel it.
So I usually sense these things. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, now that I've told you how to do this in a male way, the females can just sit there and just say, do it. And it'll work. Depending on how much in touch they are with their female way. But the other thing is, too, is that you'll discover after you get used to this more, after a week or two or so, you'll get used to it. And you'll probably find that certain negative emotions like rage, things like this where you get really mad or upset or even really depressed or different things, can cause these things, even though they're working, they might go off their axis a little bit. It gets stronger over time, but in the beginning. And to fix it, you just close your eyes and you just see the whole thing and just say, fix it. You know, you just say, go back, and everything goes, takes like 1 second. It really responds to the intention like crazy. Definitely every time you're about to do a healing in someone, when we get all the way through this and you see what these are, and you're working with somebody else, or you're going to do something psychically or any of those kinds of levels, you just want to take 1 second to feel the flow through your prana, through your Merkaba, and 1 second to see that all of this is perfect before you begin. Because it can get knocked off. It can get slightly moved. And just by the intention of saying, do that, it happens. I can't see, whoever's doing this. Okay.
Our question is that I feel that pulsation frequency is 2 times lower than heartbeat. Do you understand my question?
Yes, I do. So that's what you're feeling is the heartbeat is twice as fast then, right?
Yeah.
Exactly?
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's an overtone of it then, or something.
It's okay, no?
But it's tied to it, if it's, I think. I haven't done this work, because it's not essential for what I'm doing right now to know if it's linked to the heartbeat or not. If I come to a place where I need to know that, then I have to sit down and do all the work and find out for sure. But right now, I don't really care. Because it doesn't really make any difference in the bigger picture of whether it's tied to the heartbeat or certain biorhythms or something else. I don't know. But for certain, what I know for certain, it's not even a matter of doubt, is that this whole thing is intimately connected to the heart, in the sacred place of the heart. When we lay out the whole pattern, we're going to show you the whole mapping before you get out of this. You'll understand exactly how, when an image is created, exactly where it goes, how it goes, where it goes, what it does, and how it gets out into this world out here. You'll know the whole thing before you get out of here. Whoever, I don't know who's next. Olivia's she's just handing it to people. Oh, the pulsing. Yeah, what happens is you'll discover after a little while that the pulsing that's on all these things are all simultaneously. They'll eventually become all simultaneously. And when the sphere appears, the whole sphere will be pulsing.
I activated it and it all connected. it felt like I had a hat on my head.
Yeah, it does. It does kind of feel like a hat.
And then the pulsing, the first one turned on at 24, the second at 16, and the third at 24. And then the pulsing itself is in exact synchronicity with my heartbeat.
Yeah,
My heart is beating at the same as this pulsing.
Yeah, I
and
think it is.
my third eye was also pulsing, which...
Well, yeah, the third eye is where it's the generator of this pulse.
Just want to make sure I have the order of steps right. So you do the like the short stem, as it were, and then you connect it to the pineal chakra. Is that correct?
Yeah, you start here, get the shorter of the two, get them so they're both the same.
You get them to palm length, and then connect to the pineal chakra, and then you make them the proper length, and then you fix the pulsing.
Yeah, then you fix. That's right.
Okay. And is there any amount of time you have to like hold any one of those steps for a certain amount of time? Like another pulsing, you have to wait for like 20, 25 pulses. For any of the 3 steps before, do you have to like wait any set amount of time for it to hold?
Oh, to hold? Set it on a timer?
No, do you have to like if after you've like made one of them palm length, you have to like wait for a certain amount of time? Like, do you have to wait a minute, or can you just like go on to the next?
Oh no, you can go immediately on.
Okay.
You don't have to wait. As soon as you do it instantly, you can go to the next one.
Okay. And then for the last one, you wait for 20 pulses or so.
Yeah. I mean, each one you have to wait till you're 20 pulses, but after you've done the pulsing, you can drop it immediately, go to the next one, as soon as you're done. And I just recommend you do this once a day for the next 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, this should become more familiar, and it's also more familiar for your body. But in itself, it doesn't do much. Just same like with the Merkaba. In itself, the Merkaba doesn't do much. But when you hook the Merkaba and this to the heart, then you're really talking about something that is the most powerful thing in the universe. There's nothing more powerful than this. If there is, I don't know what it is. It's so powerful I can't see it.
Just a little clarification. When you've done the first stretch to palm width, and then you move to your chakras and you're working on the wiggles, are you back on the head, or are you out at the end of the tube where you stretched it to?
Okay, you grab the beams, go get them both so they're both that way. Connect the beams inside, pull them out, and then get the pulsing.
But when you're working on the wiggles inside the head,
Oh, inside, yes.
Are your hands at the end of the tube that you just stretched?
No, that's when your hands are on the head.
They're on the head.
They're
Okay,
on
I
the
didn't
head
get that.
itself.
Thank you.
I really want to get this clear, because a few months from now you're going to realize how important this is, and you may want to help other people. Yeah, you want to actually hold the head. With your chakra here is the same size as these down here, and it's right here in the front. This is a really powerful chakra in your hands and your feet too.
So while it's coming out up to the circle, it's going through the hand.
Yeah, you have a cone coming out both sides. Oh, is that what you? Oh, you mean the beam? Oh, yeah, the beam's sticking right through your hand. Yeah. Yeah, at the very end, your intention you pull out. You go past it, and it'll go to the point where the beam is already out, and then as your hand goes out, the beam will just follow right behind it.
Oh, so my hand goes out with it.
Yeah, as you do this, go in, get the beams connected, then the beams are out a little ways, but as you pull it out and you go past there, they'll just follow you. And when they get to this exact geographical location of the sphere, they will stop. And then your hands might go farther. Your hands could go that much farther. It doesn't matter. But the beam will stop precisely where that sphere is. Will be. Sphere's not there yet. I'm sure the Tibetans have a name for it. And maybe the Mayans do too, I don't know. But I just call them the beams of light. And I have to give it, my job is to translate everything from the ancient levels into modern day contexts so we can make sense of it. Because a lot of this stuff, you say samadhi, it doesn't make much sense to people. They don't really know what that means. Yeah.
My question is, could you just summarize one more time for us?
Yeah, sure.
The brief steps. And one thing I became unclear about when I went to the pineal chakra was, did I look for all those squigglies at the same time, or just the squigglies on the beam?
No, you eliminate all squigglies or wigglies except for the ones you're working with. And that's intention too. Intention does that.
Yeah.
And you can do it. You can do it in science. It's like Bob with that little thing I was talking about, his device that he could see into. We would take a bowl of pennies, 3 pennies in it, and shake it, and just the pennies, when they hit each other, the molecules would vibrate like crazy and produce microwaves, and you could see it on the computer screen when you did that. It was just sort of like that. And so he would then, one of his demonstrations was he would take basically like a photograph, but it's more than that, a photograph of the bowl of pennies, which would go all the way to the most distant stars, as far back as forever. And the whole thing was picked on there. And then he would take everything other than the bowl and the pennies and erase it. He could now track that bowl anywhere in the world. And he was demonstrating this. It was so cool. I mean, he could take the bowl of the 3 pennies and have somebody walk 2 miles away and hide behind a rock. And then at a certain time, they'd say, okay, now, they would and shake them, and you would see it on the screen. But literally, you can go over the horizon. You can even get the entire Earth between you. It's that much mass, and still pick them up on the other side of the Earth. You can't lose them, because he'll erase everything else, and it isn't there. And so you're doing the similar kind of thing. You're going to erase everything else that's going on here and only look at those. And so you won't see these. Okay. You won't even know they're there. You only see just the 2.
You only deal with those when you come to that beam.
Yeah, just the ones with that beam. Forget about all the other beams, just one at a time.
Okay.
And only see those. Otherwise, it would be really hard to. That's so many little wiggly worms in there.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, 2 of them is enough. So how many people could feel when they would connect? Can you feel when they connect? It's almost like, you can feel them when they connect, and then they freak out. And they will break apart. And you have to do it several times before they feel like they're safe or something. I don't know what it is, but it's just, I don't really understand it exactly. Any more questions on this? And then we'll go on to another subject.
Hi. I heard that fluoride calcifies the pineal gland.
So you think that fluoride is the reason why this calcium is building up?
Yes, that's what I heard. Water.
I know, it's a bad thing. Fluoride and chlorine it's amazing. They put 2 poisons in our water. Chlorine is really bad too. They're both really bad. I don't use fluoride anything, and I don't drink chloride ever, if I can help it. Okay. Actually, the world has, the United Nations, let's put it exactly where it's coming from. The United Nations is determined to reduce the population of the world. They started with AIDS. They created AIDS. I can prove it in court. They started AIDS, and Dr. Stricker, if probably old AIDS patients, if they're still alive, would remember him. And he shows how exactly they took the retrovirus from a sheep and a cow and blended them together. He went on a board, because he was one of the team members that did it. And they went through the whole thing and showed exactly the whole formula, exactly how they created AIDS. And then he announced on that video that they had the cure also. So and at that time, he then shows up the letter from the United Nations showing that because of overpopulation and what it means, and you can understand it, there's been many computer models on overpopulation, but they all end up at basically the same. It's just a matter of how many people we get to. Most of them break down completely at about 12 billion, but now we're rethinking a lot of this because we're at just approaching 7 billion and we're starting to break down. But then after that, all life on Earth dies, everything. We kill the planet by our activity. And so the United Nations has declared, well, we can't do this. And so they are attempting to reduce the population. At that piece of paper that Dr. Stricker showed, which was from the actual United Nations stating all of this and signed by them, they wanted to reduce the population by 75%. They've changed that now since then, and now they want to reduce it by 90%. And that's their intention. And so they're doing all kinds of things to reduce the population. And one of them is they've changed the chlorine that goes into water. And I got this straight from certain members of the secret government. I don't know why they told me this, but I had it verified by certain chemists in Japan, and it blew their minds too. The chlorine molecule, it has one extra atom on it. And that one extra atom causes Alzheimer's disease. Only it's not a normal one. It goes normal for a while, and then it accelerates 500 times faster and kills the person. And we have an epidemic of that in the world right now. And it's from the water we're drinking and the chlorine. We're coming to a point here pretty soon when just massive amounts of people are going to die from this. And that's what they want to do. They want to get rid of as much as possible in order to save the world. And even like the AIDS virus, they already have the cure for it. It's a light. I have it too. We have a light that you can shine it on AIDS and it's gone. They don't have it anymore. But the government took it from us. I mean, we still know how to make it. It's pretty simple. Well, it's not actually simple. It's pretty complex, actually. We had a light that would cure every single disease in the world within 2 minutes, usually. And they took all that stuff from us. They say you can't. They're trying to reduce the population. They don't want it to grow faster.